Orpheus had already done the impossible. He had entered the land of the dead and convinced its rulers to give his wife back. There was only one condition: walk toward the light and do not look back. Eurydice followed somewhere behind him. He could not see her. He could not touch her. He had only trust. And when freedom was only a few steps away, Orpheus turned around. Why would someone risk everything just to be certain? The man whose music could move the world. Before Orpheus became the man who looked back, he was the man whose music seemed able to move almost anything. Ancient poets imagined him as a singer of extraordinary power, a Thracian musician whose lyre could soften what should have been unmoved. Trees leaned toward his songs. Wild animals forgot their violence. Even stones seemed willing to follow where his music led. That image matters because Orpheus begins his story with a gift most people would envy: the ability to make the world respond to him. He could create harmony where there had been resistance. He could make listeners feel what words alone could not explain. But there was one thing his music could not prevent: loss. And that is where the myth stops being a story about a magical musician and becomes something painfully human. Because talent can change what other people feel. Love can change what we are willing to endure. Neither gives us control over what can be taken from us. Orpheus loved Eurydice. The ancient sources do not give us a long courtship filled with intimate scenes. They give us something harsher. They bring us almost immediately to the moment when happiness becomes fragile. The wedding that ended in silence. In Ovid's version, the wedding itself carries a warning. Hymen, the god associated with marriage, is present, but the signs are wrong. The wedding torch sputters and fills the air with smoke instead of burning brightly. Then the omen becomes reality. While Eurydice walks through the grass with the naiads, a serpent bites her ankle. She dies. Virgil preserves a different detail. In his account, Eurydice encounters the snake while trying to escape the pursuit of Aristeus. The ancient versions do not agree on every circumstance of her death. They agree on what matters to Orpheus. She is suddenly gone. There is no heroic battle he can win, no enemy he can challenge, no mistake he can repair with an apology. One moment Eurydice belongs to the world of the living. The next, she does not. For most people in myth, death is the boundary that ends the argument. For Orpheus, grief becomes an argument against the boundary itself. He mourns, but mourning is not enough. He sings, but singing to the living is not enough. So he chooses the one direction from which no ordinary traveler expects to return: down. Ovid says he descends through the Taenarian gate into the world below. Orpheus is not going there to conquer death with a sword. He carries the only weapon he has ever trusted: his music. The bargain no living man should have won. Imagine what kind of grief makes the underworld seem like a reasonable destination. Orpheus passes into the realm of shades and stands before the rulers of the dead. Then he plays. In Ovid's telling, his song does something almost absurd. The dead themselves begin to weep. The punishments of the underworld pause. Sisyphus stops pushing his stone. Ixions will become still. Even the Furies are said to shed tears. Orpheus does not ask to defeat death forever. His plea is more careful than that. Eurydice will belong to death eventually, he argues. Everyone will. He asks only that the years taken from her too early be returned. And the impossible happens. The rulers of the underworld agree. Eurydice is called forward from among the newly dead. But mercy comes with a condition. Orpheus must walk upward toward the living world. Eurydice will follow behind him. He must not turn his eyes toward her. If he looks back before the journey is complete, the gift is lost. At first, this sounds simple. Do not turn around. Compared with entering the underworld, charming the dead, and moving its rulers to compassion, how difficult could walking forward possibly be? That is the trap inside the myth. The hardest part of Orpheus's journey is not facing monsters. It is enduring uncertainty, the long walk without proof. Ovid describes the path upward as steep, dark, and silent. Orpheus walks first. Eurydice follows. He knows the promise. But knowing a promise is not the same as seeing it fulfilled. Every step takes him closer to daylight. Every step also asks him to continue without checking. He cannot turn around to see whether Eurydice is still there. He cannot search her face for reassurance. He cannot reach backward and take her hand. He has to behave as though the thing he desperately wants is real before he is allowed to confirm that it is real. And suddenly the condition does not feel small anymore. It feels almost perfectly designed to test the part of us that fear controls. Think about what loss has already taught Orpheus. He once had Eurydice. Then, without warning, she was taken. When something has disappeared from your life once, trust does not always return simply because someone promises it will. The future can begin to feel like a place where loss is always preparing to happen again. So Orpheus keeps walking. The darkness gives him nothing. The silence gives him nothing. Ahead, perhaps, there is light. Behind him is the person for whom he crossed the boundary of death. But he is forbidden to verify that she is there. This is where modern retellings often invent footsteps, whispers, or complete silence behind him. The ancient texts do not need those details. The psychological pressure is already there. He must continue without proof. And the closer he comes to success, the more terrible one thought can become. What if she is not there? The moment doubt became stronger than trust. Ovid tells us they had almost reached the surface. There was only a little more to climb. Then fear entered the final steps. He was afraid, Ovid says, that he might lose her again. He wanted to look at her. And Orpheus turned. Virgil describes the moment differently, as a sudden, overpowering impulse that defeats his resolve at the very threshold of daylight. Neither poet gives us a long philosophical debate inside his mind. The action is faster than that. He looks. For one instant, certainty wins. He sees Eurydice. And because he sees her too soon, he loses her. The tragedy is almost unbearable because his fear is proven wrong and made real in the same movement. She was there. She had been following. The promise was working. The thing he needed to confirm did not need confirmation. But the act of checking destroys the truth he was trying to protect. Orpheus reaches for her. There is nothing he can hold. In Ovid's version, Eurydice does not condemn him. She dies a second time, and her final farewell is barely heard. Virgil gives her a more anguished response, asking what madness has ruined them both. The emotional difference between the poets matters. But both versions leave Orpheus with the same reality. He did not lose Eurydice because he stopped loving her. He lost her because love had become terrified of uncertainty, losing her twice. The first death happened to Orpheus. The second happened through him. That distinction changes grief. The first loss invites the question, why did this happen? The second invites a much more dangerous question. Why did I do that? Ovid says Orpheus tries to cross the river again. The ferryman refuses him. This time there will be no second performance before the rulers below. No new bargain. No correction. Orpheus sits by the river of death for 7 days without food, held there by grief. He has already discovered something worse than powerlessness. He had power. He had succeeded. He had brought Eurydice almost all the way back. And then, in one movement, he became part of the reason she disappeared again. This is why the myth survives so easily outside the ancient world. Most of us will never descend into an underworld. But many people know the smaller version of Orpheus's turn. You send another message because you need to know whether someone still cares. You ask the same question again because the first answer did not quiet the fear. You check, test, demand reassurance. reopen an old wound, or look back at something you promised yourself you would leave behind. Sometimes the checking gives information. Sometimes it changes the very relationship we were trying to secure. Fear says certainty will make us safe. But certainty has a price when we demand it at the wrong moment. The danger of needing certainty. It would be easy to reduce Orpheus to a lesson about obedience. Hades gave him one rule. Orpheus broke it. End of story. But that explanation is too small for a myth that has haunted artists for centuries. The rule matters because of what it demands psychologically. Walk forward while the person you love is behind you. Trust while your senses cannot confirm anything. Keep moving even though experience has already taught you that happiness can vanish without warning. Orpheus fails at exactly the point where many human beings fail. Not when love is absent. When love is afraid. Fear often disguises itself as a reasonable request. Just check once. Just make sure. Just ask again. Just look back. And sometimes we do need evidence. Blind trust is not automatically wisdom, but the myth asks about a different moment. What happens when no amount of reassurance feels like enough? What happens when the need to remove uncertainty becomes stronger than the ability to live with it? Orpheus crossed the world of the dead for Eurydice. No one can seriously say he did not care enough. His tragedy is that caring deeply did not protect him from fear. Perhaps it made the fear stronger. At the final threshold, he could imagine losing her again more vividly than he could trust that she was still there. So he chose 1 second of certainty, and paid for it with the future he had almost recovered. That is why the last turn still feels familiar. We look back at old relationships. We reopen old conversations. We return to old versions of ourselves. We ask for proof from people who have already answered us. Sometimes we are searching for truth. Sometimes we are searching for relief from uncertainty. Those are not always the same thing. Orpheus could move trees, stones, animals, ghosts, and even the rulers of the underworld. But at the most important moment of his life, he could not move past his own need to know. Maybe that is the warning hidden inside his story. The thing we are most afraid to lose can become the very thing we grip so tightly that we help destroy it. And sometimes the hardest form of trust is not believing that everything will be fine. It is taking one more step forward before you turn around.